My name is Maya Patel and I'm 29 years old. 3 years ago, my parents sat me down in our living room in Houston, Texas, and told me I had two choices: marry a man I'd never met or watch our family business crumble into nothing. I chose marriage. But what they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd been planning my escape for months. And when I finally walked away, I didn't just leave. I took everything they thought they'd secured. Everything they thought marrying me off would protect. Stick around because this story gets better or worse depending on whose side you're on. Just a moment before we get into the story, if you've ever felt like your family treated you more like a business asset than a daughter, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell because you're going to want to see how this unfolds. Trust me, the revenge is sweet, calculated, and absolutely worth the wait. Now let's go back to where it all started. Growing up in Houston, I was always a good daughter. My parents, Rajesh and Priya Patel, ran a mid-sized textile import business they'd built from scratch 30 years ago. They worked 16-hour days, missed school plays, skipped birthdays, all to build something they could pass down. I understood that. I respected it. So when they asked me to study business in college, I did. When they asked me to work weekends at the warehouse during summer breaks, I showed up. I was their investment and I knew it. By the time I turned 25, I was the company's operations manager. I streamlined our supply chains, renegotiated contracts with manufacturers in India, and cut costs by 18% in my first year. My parents bragged about me at the temple, telling everyone how their daughter was going to take the business into the future. I felt proud. I felt needed and I thought I was building my legacy. But then the market shifted. Fast fashion took over. Our competitors started offering cheaper alternatives, cutting corners we refused to cut. Orders dropped. Our biggest client, a department store chain, pulled their contract and went with a factory in Bangladesh that could undercut us by 30%. Within 6 months, we were bleeding money. My dad stopped sleeping. My mom stopped eating. I watched them age 10 years in half that time. I worked harder. I stayed at the office until midnight, cold calling potential clients, pitching new designs, trying to pivot our strategy. But it wasn't enough. The debt was piling up. The bank was circling. And then my parents found their solution. His name was Arjun Mehta. 33 years old, son of Vikram Mehta, who owned a chain of successful restaurants across Texas and Oklahoma. Vikram had money. More importantly, he had connections. He knew investors, knew people who could keep our business afloat. And he wanted something simple in return: a daughter-in-law from a respectable family. My parents presented it to me on a Tuesday evening. I remember because I'd just gotten home from a failed pitch meeting, exhausted and hungry. Mom had made my favorite meal, chicken biryani, and I should have known something was wrong. Dad cleared his throat, hands folded on the table like he was about to present a business proposal. "Maya," he said, his voice careful, measured. "We've been talking to the Mehta family." I looked up from my plate. "The restaurant people?" "Yes. Vikram Mehta has a son, Arjun. He's a good boy. Educated. Well-mannered. He's looking to settle down." My stomach dropped. I saw where this was going, but I couldn't believe it. Not in 2022. Not in Houston, Texas. Not from parents who'd always told me I could be anything I wanted. "You want me to meet him?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Mom jumped in, her tone bright and forced. "We think you two would be very compatible. Same background, same values. And Vikram has offered to help with the business. He knows investors who could help with the business if I marry his son," I finished. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom's smile faltered. "It's not like that," Dad said quietly. "This is about family. About building connections. The Mehtas are good people. Arjun is successful. You'd have a good life." "A good life," I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the words. "You're selling me for a business loan." "Maya." Mom's voice was sharp now, defensive. "Don't be dramatic. This is how things are done. How do you think your father and I got married? My parents arranged it and look how well it turned out. We're happy. We built a life." I stared at her, this woman who'd worked alongside my dad for 3 decades, who'd sacrificed everything for their business. And now she was asking me to do the same. Not for love, not for partnership, but for money. "I need to think about it," I said, pushing my plate away. Dad's face hardened. "There's not much time to think. The bank is calling in our loans. If we don't secure new funding in the next 3 months, We lose everything. The warehouse, the inventory, all of it. 25 years of work, gone. He let that sit between us, the weight of their entire lives pressing down on my shoulders. You have 2 weeks, he said. Meet Arjun. Talk to him. If you say no, fine. But understand what that means for this family. I met Arjun the following Saturday at an upscale Indian restaurant his father owned. He was handsome in a generic way, tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy who looked good in family photos. He talked about his MBA from UT Austin, his plans to expand his father's business into Louisiana, his love of golf. He was polite, boring, and utterly forgettable. Over butter chicken and naan, he asked me about my work. I told him about the textile business, about the challenges we were facing. He nodded along, but I could see he wasn't really listening. To him, this was a formality. A checkbox on his parents' list of requirements for a suitable bride. So, he said, leaning back in his chair with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. What do you think? Should we give this a shot? I looked at him, this stranger who held my family's future in his hands without even knowing it. And I thought about my parents, their sleepless nights, their desperate hope that I'd save them. Sure, I said. Let's give it a shot. The engagement happened fast. Too fast. Vikram Mehta made his move immediately, introducing my father to a private investor who was willing to inject $300,000 into the business. The terms were favorable, almost suspiciously so. My dad signed the papers with shaking hands, relief written across his face for the first time in months. The wedding was set for 4 months later. My mom started planning immediately, booking the venue, hiring the caterer, and ordering my lehenga. She was happier than I'd seen her in years, chattering about guest lists and flower arrangements. Every time I tried to talk to her about my feelings, about my doubts, she'd wave me off. Cold feet are normal, she'd say. Every bride feels this way. Once you're married, once you have children, you'll understand. This is what matters. Family and stability. But I didn't have cold feet. I was furious. And as the weeks ticked by, as the wedding invitations went out and the RSVPs came back, that rage crystallized into something sharp and focused. I wasn't just going to walk down that aisle and surrender my life for their mistakes. I was going to take control. And I was going to make sure that when I left, they'd understand exactly what they'd done. The engagement period was suffocating. Arjun and I went through the motions, dinner with both families, shopping for wedding bands, smiling for photos that my mom posted on Facebook. Everyone congratulated us. Everyone said how perfect we looked together. Nobody asked if I was happy. Arjun wasn't cruel. That would have made it easier, giving me a clear villain to hate. Instead, he was indifferent. He treated me like a business arrangement, which I suppose I was. We'd meet for coffee once a week, make small talk about work and weather, then go our separate ways. He never asked about my dreams, my fears, what I wanted from life. I was a checkbox, nothing more. 3 weeks into the engagement, I was at the warehouse doing inventory when I overheard my dad on the phone. His office door was cracked open and his voice carried across the empty space. Yes, Vikram. Yes, I understand. The additional investment will come through after the wedding. I know. I appreciate your patience. Mai's a good girl. She won't back out. My hands froze on the clipboard I was holding. Additional investment. After the wedding. This wasn't just about securing one loan. Vikram Mehta was planning to pump more money into our business, but only if I went through with the marriage. I was collateral, insurance, and a guarantee that my family would stay loyal to his family's interests. I set down the clipboard carefully, walked to my car, and sat in the driver's seat with my hands gripping the steering wheel. For 10 minutes I just breathed, feeling the anger pulse through my veins. Then I pulled out my phone and started searching. I'd always been good with numbers, with systems, with finding solutions to complex problems. That night I applied those skills to my own situation. I researched marriage laws in Texas, property rights, business structures. I looked into what would happen to the Mehta family's investment if I divorced Arjun. I studied the contract my father had signed, looking for loopholes, weaknesses, anything I could use. And then I found something interesting. The investment agreement had a clause that tied the funding to the marriage, but it didn't specify length. If I married Arjun and then divorced him within a year, the Mehta family couldn't demand the money back. The business would keep the investment. And if I could prove the marriage was entered under duress or false pretenses, I might even have grounds for an annulment. But that wasn't enough. I didn't just want to escape. I wanted to thrive. I wanted to show everyone that I was more than a pawn in their business games. I started working on a backup plan. Quietly, carefully, I began documenting everything. I screenshotted text messages where my parents pressured me about the wedding. I recorded conversations where my dad talked about the business investments. I kept a journal detailing how I felt, how trapped I was, how every suggestion that I postpone or cancel was shot down immediately. At the same time, I started building my own career exit strategy. I'd been operations manager at my parents' company for 3 years, and I'd built relationships with suppliers, manufacturers, and clients. I reached out to them casually, mentioning I might be interested in consulting work in the future. Several of them responded enthusiastically. I had skills, connections, and a reputation. I could survive on my own. But there was something else I needed to do, something riskier. I needed to understand the Mehta family's business. If I was going to be tied to them even temporarily, I needed leverage. I started asking Arjun questions about his family's restaurants. He loved talking about the business, the expansion plans, the profit margins. He had no idea I was memorizing every detail, filing it away for later. Through him, I learned that Vikram Mehta's restaurant chain was successful, but it had problems. Health code violations at 2 locations that had been quietly settled. A discrimination lawsuit from a former employee that was heading to court. Accounting irregularities that suggested someone was skimming profits. Arjun mentioned these things casually like gossip, never imagining I'd care. But I did. I cared very much. 2 months before the wedding, my best friend Zara came to visit. We'd been friends since college, and she was the only person who knew how I really felt about the marriage. We sat in my apartment drinking wine, and she looked at me with concern etched across her face. "Maya, you don't have to do this," she said. "You can walk away. Your parents will be upset, but they'll get over it." I shook my head. If I walk away now, the Mehta family will pull their investment. My parents lose everything. And then they'll resent me for the rest of their lives. I'll be the daughter who destroyed the family business. "So what are you going to do? Marry him and be miserable forever?" "No," I said, taking a long sip of wine. "I'm going to marry him. Let the investment clear. And then I'm going to leave. On my terms. With everything I need to start over." Zara's eyes widened. That's actually brilliant. And terrifying." "It's necessary," I said. "They want to use me? Fine. But I'm going to use this situation too. I'm going to come out of this stronger, richer, and completely free." The conversation with Zara crystallized everything. I wasn't a victim. I was a strategist. And this marriage was going to be the best investment I ever made, just not in the way my parents imagined. The wedding approached like a storm I could see coming but couldn't stop. My mom was ecstatic, my dad was relieved, and I was numb. I went through the motions, attended the bridal showers, smiled at the ceremonies. Inside, I was counting down days, marking off check boxes on my secret plan. 1 week before the wedding, Arjun and I met for lunch. He seemed distracted, checking his phone constantly. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just work stuff. Dad's been on my case about the new location in Dallas. He wants me to manage it personally after we get back from the honeymoon." "We're going on a honeymoon?" He looked up, surprised. "Yeah. Didn't your parents tell you? My dad booked us a week in Cancun. All-inclusive resort. It's his wedding gift. A week alone with a man I barely knew in a foreign country, pretending to be happily married." The thought made my skin crawl. But I smiled. "That sounds nice. It'll be good for us to spend some real time together," Arjun said, and for a moment, something genuine flickered across his face. "I know this whole thing has been weird. The arrangement and everything. But maybe we can make it work. Build something real." I looked at him, this man who was trying in his limited way to be decent. And I almost felt bad for what I was about to do. Almost. "Maybe," I said softly. "Let's see what happens." The wedding was a blur of red and gold, of Sanskrit chants I'd heard at 100 other weddings but never thought I'd hear on my own. I walked 7 circles around the sacred fire with Arjun, each step feeling like I was moving further from myself. My parents beamed from the front row. Vikram Mehta looked satisfied, like he'd just closed a successful business deal. Which I suppose he had. I smiled at the photos. I accepted the congratulations. I let my mom hug me and whisper, "I'm so proud of you," in my ear, even though the words felt like ash. That night, in the hotel suite Arjun's parents had booked for us, I lay awake while my new husband slept in the bed beside me. We hadn't consummated the marriage. He'd been too drunk from the reception and I'd been too angry. He'd passed out within minutes, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the gold wedding bangles that felt like handcuffs on my wrists. I pulled out my phone and checked my bank account. The consulting jobs I'd lined up were set to start in 2 months. I had $12,000 saved up, money I'd been stashing away quietly for the past 3 months. It wasn't enough to live on forever, but it was enough to disappear. The honeymoon in Cancun was 7 days of performance art. We lounged by the pool, ate at expensive restaurants, took sunset photos that Arjun posted on Instagram with captions about new beginnings. I played the role of a happy newlywed, laughing at his jokes, holding his hand on the beach, all while my mind was elsewhere, calculating, planning. On the 4th day, while Arjun was at the resort gym, I called Zara from the balcony of our room. "How's married life?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Exactly as miserable as I expected," I said, watching waves crash against the shore. "But I got what I needed. The investment cleared 3 days ago. The money's in my parents' business account. Vikram can't touch it now, not without a major legal battle. So what's next? I'll stick it out for a few more months. Establish residency, build my case. Then I filed for divorce on grounds of duress. I've been documenting everything, all the pressure from my parents, the business arrangement, everything." "Your parents are going to lose their minds," Zara said quietly. "Yeah. They are." When we got back to Houston, reality set in quickly. Arjun and I moved into a townhouse his parents had bought for us as a wedding gift. It was nice, modern, exactly the kind of place a young professional couple should live. Except we weren't a couple. We were roommates with a marriage license. Arjun threw himself into work, leaving early and coming home late. I did the same, but for different reasons. I started my consulting business officially, registering the LLC, building a website, reaching out to my network. Within 2 weeks, I had my first client, a textile manufacturer in India who wanted help breaking into the American market. Within a month, I had 3 more. The work was demanding but exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I was building something that was entirely mine. No family expectations, no arranged marriages, just me and my skills and my vision. I worked from coffee shops during the day, careful to keep my business separate from anything connected to the Mehta or Patel families. At night, I continued my research into Vikram Mehta's restaurant empire. What I'd learned from Arjun during our engagement was just the surface. I dug deeper, filing Freedom of Information Act requests for health inspection reports, searching court records for lawsuits, tracking down former employees who might be willing to talk. And I found gold. Vikram Mehta's flagship restaurant, the one he was proudest of, had a history of health code violations that had been swept under the rug through generous donations to local politicians. One former manager I tracked down told me about systematic wage theft, employees being forced to work off the clock, immigrant workers being threatened with deportation if they complained. I compiled everything into a detailed file. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but having leverage felt good. Felt like power. 3 months into the marriage, things started falling apart. Arjun came home one evening looking stressed. He'd been drinking, his tie loosened, his eyes unfocused. "My dad's been asking questions," he said, collapsing onto the couch. "About you. About why you're never at family dinners. Why are you always working?" I sat down carefully, my laptop still open on the coffee table. "I'm building my consulting business. You know that." "Yeah, but it looks bad, Maya. It looks like you don't care about being part of the family." "I'm not part of the family," I said quietly. "I'm part of a business arrangement." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw hurt in his eyes. "Is that really what you think this is?" "Arjun, we barely know each other. We were pushed into this marriage because your dad wanted a connection to my family's business and my parents wanted your dad's money. Let's not pretend this is something it's not." "I've been trying," he said, his voice rising. "I've been trying to make this work. To be a good husband. But you're completely checked out." "You're right," I said, standing up. "I'm checked out. Because I never wanted this. Any of this." The fight escalated. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. Arjun stormed out, spending the night at his parents' house. And I sat alone in that townhouse, feeling the walls close in, knowing I couldn't wait much longer. The next morning I got a call from my dad. "Maya, Vikram Mehta called me. He's concerned about your marriage. He says you're not being a good wife. That you're embarrassing, Arjun. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm working, Dad. I'm building a business. Isn't that what you always wanted me to do? Not at the expense of your marriage. This partnership with the Metas is crucial for us. You need to make this work. Or what? Asked my voice cold. You'll lose the investment? You'll have to actually figure out how to run your business without using me as collateral. Maya, don't talk to me like that. We're your family. Everything we did was for you. No, I said. Everything you did was for you. For your business. For your legacy. I was just a tool you used to save yourselves. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From clarity. I'd been holding on to guilt, onto some hope that my parents would realize what they'd done to me. But that call made it clear. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as an investment that was underperforming. That afternoon I met with a divorce attorney. Her name was Patricia Wong, and she specialized in cases involving coerced marriages and business arrangements disguised as family obligations. This is good, she said, flipping through the documents I'd compiled. The recordings, the texts, the timeline. We can definitely argue duress. But Maya, you need to understand this is going to get ugly. Your family will fight this. The Metas will fight this. Are you ready for that? I thought about my parents' faces at the wedding, glowing with relief and pride. I thought about Vikram Mehta's satisfied smile. I thought about Arjun trying in his limited way to make a sham marriage feel real. And I thought about myself 3 months ago, walking those 7 circles around the fire while every cell in my body screamed to run. Yes, I said. I'm ready. I filed for divorce on a Monday morning, exactly 4 months after the wedding. Patricia submitted the paperwork citing duress, emotional coercion, and the fact that the marriage was entered into as part of a business arrangement. Along with the filing, we included a comprehensive timeline. The conversations where my parents pressured me, the investment agreement tying the Mehta family's money to the marriage, recordings of my dad talking openly about the arrangement. It was all legal. All documented and damning. Arjun received the papers that afternoon. He called me immediately, his voice a mix of shock and rage. What the hell, Maya? You're divorcing me. Yes. We've been married for 4 months. For months. And you're just giving up. I'm not giving up, I said calmly. I'm setting myself free from something I should never have been forced into. Forced? Nobody forced you. Read the documents, Arjun. Read the recordings. Your dad made a business deal with my parents and I was the price. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle, but this was never a real marriage. He was silent for a long moment. Then, my father is going to destroy you. And your family. Let him try, I said and hung up. The fallout was immediate and nuclear. Vikram Mehta called my father within hours, demanding I withdraw the divorce filing. When my dad called me begging me to reconsider, I told him I was done being his bargaining chip. He showed up at my apartment the next day, my mom in tow. Maya, you're destroying everything, my dad shouted. The Metas are threatening to pull their support. They're calling in favors, telling investors not to work with us. You're killing our business. Your business, I corrected. Not mine. I built something for myself. Something that doesn't depend on arranged marriages and shady deals. My mom was crying, her hands clasped together like she was praying. Please, please think about what you're doing. You're tearing this family apart. You tore it apart when you sold me to save yourselves, I said. I'm just finally walking away from the wreckage. They left, my mom's sobs echoing down the hallway. I didn't cry. I'd cried all my tears months ago. But I wasn't done. The divorce was just the beginning. 2 days after filing, I sent an email to the Houston Chronicle's investigative reporter. Attached was my comprehensive file on Vikram Mehta's restaurants, the health code violations, the wage theft, the intimidation of immigrant workers. Along with it, I included testimonials from 3 former employees I'd interviewed, all willing to go on record. The story ran the following week. Popular Houston restaurant chain under fire for labor violations and health code cover UPS. It was front-page news. The details were damning, and within hours the story had been picked up by local TV stations. Vikram Mehta's empire started crumbling. Health inspectors descended on his restaurants. The Labor Department opened an investigation. Social media erupted, with customers sharing their own stories of poor treatment and questionable practices. Two of his major investors pulled out, spooked by the negative publicity. Arjun called me, his voice barely controlled. This was you. You did this. I just told the truth, I said. If your father's business can't survive the truth, that's not my problem. You destroyed my family out of spite. No. I exposed corruption that should have been dealt with years ago. Your father thought he could buy his way out of consequences. He was wrong. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Patricia was brilliant, presenting our case with precision. The recordings of my parents' pressure, the business arrangements, the way I'd been treated as a commodity rather than a person, it all painted a clear picture. The judge granted the divorce on grounds of duress within 6 weeks. I walked out of the courthouse a free woman. No alimony, no shared assets, nothing tying me to the Mehta family. Just my name, my business, and my future. My parents' business did suffer, but not as badly as they'd feared. Vikram Mehta was too busy trying to save his own empire to sabotage theirs. They had to work harder, take on smaller clients, and rebuild their reputation. My father blamed me publicly, telling anyone who would listen that I'd betrayed the family. My mom stopped answering my calls. I grieved that loss, the death of my relationship with my parents. But I also felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't carrying their expectations anymore, wasn't sacrificing myself for their mistakes. My consulting business thrived. Within 6 months of the divorce, I had a dozen clients, a small office in downtown Houston, and enough income to support myself comfortably. I hired 2 assistants, both young women trying to break into the industry, and I mentored them the way I wished someone had mentored me. Zara threw me a divorce party at her apartment, complete with a custom cake that said, "Congratulations on your freedom." We drank champagne and laughed, and for the first time in over a year I felt like myself again. "You did it," Zara said, raising her glass. "You actually did it. You took control of your life." "Yeah," I said, smiling. "I did." A year after the divorce, I was at a business conference in Austin when I ran into Arjun. We both froze for a moment, neither of us sure what to say. Finally he spoke. "How have you been?" "Good," I said honestly. "Really good." "You?" He shrugged. "Surviving. My dad's still dealing with the fallout from everything. The restaurants are struggling. He had to close 3 locations." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "I never wanted to hurt you. But you wanted to hurt him." "I wanted justice," I corrected. "Your father used people, including us. He treated workers like they were disposable. Someone needed to stop him." Arjun nodded slowly. "Yeah. You're right. I didn't see it then, but you're right. He got what he deserved." We talked for a few more minutes, awkward but civil. When we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure. Arjun wasn't my enemy. He'd been another pawn in his father's games, just like me. Looking back now, from my office where I run a successful consulting firm, I can see the whole picture clearly. My parents wanted to save their business, and they were willing to sacrifice me to do it. The Mehta family wanted a connection, a bridge to another business, and they saw me as the perfect tool. Nobody asked what I wanted. Nobody cared about my dreams, my autonomy, my right to choose my own life. But I took that powerlessness and turned it into power. I played their game, let them think they'd won, and then I dismantled everything from the inside. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Out of a fundamental belief that I deserved better than being someone's business transaction. The hardest part wasn't the divorce or the backlash. It was accepting that my parents might never forgive me, might never understand what they'd done wrong. I had to choose between their love and my freedom, and I chose freedom. Every time. Some people call what I did revenge. Maybe it was. But it was also justice. For me, for the workers Vikram Mehta exploited. For every person who's been told that family obligations matter more than their own happiness. I'm 29 now, running my own business, answering to no one but myself. I'm dating someone I actually chose, someone who respects my independence and my past. I have friends who support me, a life I built from scratch. And every day I wake up grateful that I found the courage to walk away from the life they tried to force me into. Because the truth they don't tell you about arranged marriages and family obligations is this. Sometimes, loving yourself means disappointing everyone else. And I'm okay with that. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped by family expectations or forced into choices you didn't want to make, leave a comment below. Share your story. Let's support each other. Hit that subscribe button for more real stories about people who took control of their lives, no matter the cost. And remember, your life belongs to you and no one else. Thanks for listening all the way through. See you in the next one.